Such is the case last night with the Boston Celtics and the Washington Wizards. The Wizards put them hands on the Boston Celtics in their last game, in Game 4. And just 2 days later, back in Boston put them paws on the Washington Wizards. 123 to 101. That's like, and you're listening to the Doug Stewart Show. That's one of life's mysteries, man, when you're talking about sports. Is the NBA in particular. We see this so much, man, where one team is so dominant over another. A team, the team that lost will make one minor adjustment, and I guess the adjustment, and we'll get into it a little bit more in depth in the next segment of the show when we get into this game from last night. But you make one little adjustment, and the big adjustment for Boston was they spread the floor out a lot last night. Really gave Isaiah Thomas room to roam. He made a lot of good plays as far as a point guard and assist and whatnot last night. Avery Bradley had a big game. Once again, we'll talk about it. But it's just crazy how it's so, off and on. It's so wishy-washy from one game to the other. Like, if you saw Game 4 in this series, you like, Washington's got it. They figured it out. They know how to stop little Isaiah Thomas. They're not going to be killing him with 30 and 40, 50-point games like he did a couple of games back. They're going to stop all of that, and then they don't have enough personnel to do it, to beat us in a game. And turn right around, and the Washington Wizards basically lay down last night. I'm not going to say they laid down. They played hard. I don't think that they mailed it in. They played very hard, but just nothing would go right. Nothing would go down for them as far as shooting the basketball, and everything went right. I always talk about the psychology of sports. And I'm telling you, man, the psychology of having home court or home field advantage, that really matters. I mean, most of the time, that really, really matters, man. The emotion of your crowd, the emotions of playing at home in front of your fans, man, is big. And you really can't put it into numbers. I mean, you really can't look and say, well, this is why we played so well tonight, and you can have some definitive proof that the crowd and the cheering had that much to do with your success in a particular game or not. There's no way to really quantify that, man. But why? Why does it always seem like that's the case in home field and home court is so big? Yeah. And I don't know whether the crowd rooting and cheering for their home team kind of subliminally plays in the minds of the referees or not. It may have something to do with it. Subliminally, I think when the referees on a particular team's home court, they may not acknowledge this. I know they won't acknowledge it. But I do think that cheering here and there when a guy goes up for a shot and he gets fouled and it's an average foul, because the crowd has a certain reaction, the officials may pay attention to it. And maybe that's what it all comes down to. It comes down to the fact that the officials subconsciously, once again, not consciously, but subconsciously, man, they make calls in favor of the home team for the most part. And I'm sure if you go back over NBA history or basketball or sports or football or baseball history in general, calls typically slightly, a small degree like in gambling in Vegas, the house has a slight advantage, maybe a 51, 52, 53% advantage to the home team, and you're listening to the Doug Stewart Show, as far as the calls they receive. And that might just be the difference. But it's crazy, man, how dominant the Wizards look in Game 4. And then in Game 5 last night, man, they couldn't hit the backside of a barn. So I want to get into the game from last night. There's a couple more things we're going to get into today from the show as well. We'll read a lot of your chat messages on the show today as well, and just have some fun and do what we do here on the Doug Stewart Show. Once again, the number is 404-382-0338. You can also Email me at doug@thedougstewartshow.com. We're talking about 1980. What were you doing in 1980? In 1980, your boy was 11 years old. In the 5th grade. '80, I was 11 years old in the 5th grade. Once again, I wore number 38 in Little League football for the Monksgonna Cowboys because George Rogers was the man that year. Okay, George Rogers was the man, all right? And it's very, very similar. I talked about Herschel Walker, but people that don't remember, George Rogers, Herschel Walker, Bo Jackson were pretty much the same running back, and that's how all of the running backs used to be back in the day. If you remember the great Marcus Dupree that played at Oklahoma, like the running backs back in the day were much different than now, and the game has changed, and it's a more open passing attack style offenses that you see now in the NFL and in college football, and in high school as well. You see these spread offenses which really feature passing. And so the backs now are smaller, they're quicker, they're able to come out of the backfield and catch a lot of passes and be implemented in these passing games. Oh, no, not in the early 1980s. 1980s, you had freight trains at running back. You had the great Marcus Dupree at Oklahoma. You had George Rogers at South Carolina. You had Bo Jackson at Auburn. And you had the man, the myth of the legend, Herschel Walker at Georgia. It was a different game. It was a different game, man. Now, listen, out of all 4 of those backs, and you're listening to the Doug Stewart Show, we do these top 5s all the time. And let me think. I'm sure I can think of another running back to complete the list and give me 5 of the best big running backs of the early 1980s. What's the dude name that we talked about? Kenjana Carter. Maybe Kenjana Carter. I think Kenjana Carter came a little bit later in the 80s, though. But same type of running back. 6'2", 230 pounds. You know, that type of running back. But if I had to rank those cats in order, and you're listening to the Doug Stewart Show, we're talking about 1980. If I had to rank them in order from 1 to 4, number 1 is the great Bo Jackson. Bo was everything those guys were, but Bo was faster than all of those guys. So number 1 would be Bo Jackson. Number two, close number two, man, was the great Marcus Dupree. I know that's blasphemous. Marcus Dupree was an absolute beast, man. Injuries, obviously, you probably seen the 30 for 30 on that cat. And just all-around dominant player. You know what? It's hard to say number 2 is Marcus Dupree. Let's just say this. Number 1 definitively is Bo Jackson. And there may be a tie for number 2 between Herschel, Marcus Dupree, and the great George Rogers. What are your thoughts? Yeah. Oh, man, that was great football back during that era, man. That was great football back during that era. The great Bo Jackson, the great Herschel Walker, the great Marcus Dupree. The 30 for 30 of Marcus Dupree really, man, is a fantastic 30 for 30. They do that fantastic. They do that just phenomenally, that whole 30 for 30 series. But it really doesn't give you the true essence of how dominant of a running back Marcus Dupree was, man, at the University of Oklahoma. I mean, just dominant, big, fast, kind of like, you know who he reminded me of? And maybe this is the 5th back that we can put in that category. I always do these top 5s. Very reminiscent, same running style as the great Eric Dickerson. And Dickerson came out of SMU probably in the early 80s, too. I'm trying to remember when Eric Dickerson came out of college. But Dickerson was around that time as well. And so that's the exact example of what I'm talking about. And I know I'm going off here on a little tangent or whatnot. But Eric Dickerson was the same type back. And I just pulled up his Wikipedia page just now. That's right. Eric Dickerson came out of SMU in 1983. Just like I'm talking about. So you think about that. Think about those 5 running backs that I just came up with off the top of my head. and how the game was back in the early 80s to how it's compared or how you compare to the game today in college football and the NFL. Today, everybody and their mama running that spread offense. They got 4 or 5 wide receivers. They got dual-threat quarterbacks, which they had dual-threat quarterbacks back then. But the big difference now is the emphasis is taken off the running back. Back in the day, the running back was the number one marquee name. I mean, the quarterbacks were, some of them were big marquee names, but for the most part, the marquee names in football were the running backs. I grew up in an era with Tony Dorsett and O.J. Simpson and Franco Harris and guys like that. They were the big names, not the stinking-ass quarterbacks. Right, not the quarterbacks, which is much different now, okay? But back then, man, I just gave you 5 off the top of my head, and what do they all have in common? They were all 6'2", 6'3", 230 pounds, could run like the wind. Wow, Bo Jackson, Herschel Walker, George Rogers, Eric Dickerson, and I'm missing one. Herschel Walker, I think. Did I say Herschel already? Oh, no, the great Marcus Dupree. Hey, I'll tell you what. All of those cats came and they played in the early 80s. All right? What we do on this show as well, and you're listening to the Doug Stewart Show on the Stewart Media and Entertainment Network, what we do on this show as well is we educate you greenhorns. Woo! My Lord. My Lord, when Dickerson used to turn that corner for SMU, woo-wee! My grandmother used to say that. Woo-wee! Yes, sir. When Dickerson used to turn that corner, when Bo Jackson and Herschel Walker and Marcus Dupree and George Rogers used to turn that corner, get out of the way. Lord have mercy. Oh, boy. Oh, man. Oh, hey, I'm sorry, man. I digress. I do that from time to time. But it's all good. When we get back from the break, man, we'll delve into this game, man. Last night, Wizards, Celtics roll. We'll still reminisce about 1980. Just off the fly, I gave you the top 5 or 5 of the biggest names in football, running back positions. The running back position. That were all big as houses and ran like the wind. Yeah. So back with this basketball talk, we get back. Once again, the number is 404-382-0338. You can also email me at Doug@theDougStewartShow.com. We reminisce around here. Back in 3 minutes. Yes, sir.
This is funny. Poetry. She poetry. She poetry. She poetry. Poetry. Hair on point. People say brown. Or maybe she was green. Better yet, chocolate. She fly, but she got an attitude. I like the way she move with them baby fat shoes. I wanna see her with the lights on. It's dark in the club, plus the music too loud. I wanna know your damn name, not your damn drink. I'm a G, gentleman, I got range. She a little peach dancer and she go to Clark Atlanta. Maybe she be trapping on the block and yo good. Either way she bad, she got class. Everybody drop their drinks when she bad. She work a job, but she hustle inside. Anything trying to kill her, she can buy. I want her on my team, she my point guard. I love her cause she's soft and hard. Poetry. She poetry. She poetry. She poetry. She poetry. Poetry. Yeah. Poetry. She poetry. I love her cause she's poetry. She poetry. She poetry. She poetry. She poetry. Her swag is divine. If you ain't got a hustle, man, you're wasting her time. So don't you even walk up to her table. She does